Good morning, noon, evening, or night, depending when you're watching this video. My name is Legend, and welcome back to World of Tanks and the greatest of games, where we feature some great replays with the greatest of moments. And today, a special feature, both me and Toby Thomas. So guess who? This guy is pretty much the fucking co-author of this whole channel by now. However, we got some amazing replays with us two in a platoon. Of course, some extra shout out to NPNL and PNL. However, for this match, he isn't loaded in yet, so we don't really see much of him. But right now in the actual match, I am very confident going aggressively into the central ditch. However, two TVPs got spotted before Toby was also committed, deciding to stay back and get some initial shots into those opponents. More of the enemy team pushes forwards, allowing Toby to get a full clip off, giving him almost 2000 damage at the start of the match. As I am driving through the center, I take notice who follows me, and with Toby's his crossfire, it's only the E50M who dares to continue. And with the initial shot that Toby hit him with, I can fully outclip him without worrying to get a high roll on average for my 5 shells. So I could comfortably stay in the open, aiming for his weaker underplate, since I'm always going to outtrade a non-clip tank with my burst damage output. Now, during his reload, Toby Thomas hides behind the allied 430U and wiggles back and forth and actually bounces off a shot from the Krangwell. Not sure if he was specifically aimed for Toby, but he made it as hard as possible, concluding in such a great bounce. Near the completion of his reload, he pokes forwards, backwards actually. By doing that, driving backwards, he has to expose less of his tank, since the Batchat is kind of rear turreted. He doesn't immediately go for the reload, but waits until the Kranwagen fires his round and is most likely to aim his last one towards the 430U. Unfortunately, whiffs the shot to the TVP, but notice that the TVP is falling back behind the Kranwagen, who is reloading, which allows Toby to use his final round to finish off the Centurion. Back in the middle, my first idea here was to give support towards the north. But with our push in the south, the enemies are actually heavily countering that. So I go back and go as the third layer as of flanking support. Because of the enemy occupation with the rest of my team, I am allowed to get another full clip off. After staying behind for a little bit, Toby times his reload near perfectly to counter the other TVP, who he noticed fired multiple rounds and pulled back behind the church. So he must be on a reload. Unfortunately, the 1-to-1 B isn't and distracts him long enough for the TVP to escape, but doesn't survive long before our team overruns both him and the TVP. So Toby decides to pull back again and relocate towards me during his reload. With the factory area looking pretty empty, I feel confident enough to occupy that location. Now being able to get all the shots to the north that I want before the enemies have pulled back. Saving the last 2 rounds for the WZ, one of them still being damaged and the last one tracking him. And the tracking shot there was actually quite fortunate, because Toby again has an excellent timing on his reload so quickly after he has shots on the G-Sword and can help me out with the WZ in the factory area, firing the rest of the clip into the tracked enemy by me, giving me an additional amount of assist damage. And with that, the battle is pretty much decided. We never run into that much of a problem. We were always on the winning hand, even though our platoon mate wasn't able to connect during this entire battle. Having the possibilities to fire off entire clips in the Batchat makes the outcome of the battle quite a certainty. It was with careful positioning and always trying to get off the best clip that helped us both, even though most of the time we were separately, to accumulate a lot of damage. only somewhat supporting each other for just a short time during the beginning and the end of the battle. So now let's go on to a battle where we actually have a lot more opportunities to help each other out. And in that battle we are playing with tank destroyers. Don't worry, it isn't a very typical tank destroyer replay. Not going for the camping location right off the bat at least. Since other TDs and our platoon mate who is finally reconnected in the concept 5 are more effective in that position where I am actually better at peeking in the front on the medium flank. And Toby being the opportunist trying to get another angle into the town area. Now right off the bat I'm getting a spot and a quick snapshot of, showing the great snap possibilities that the STRV has. And later on I'm doing the same again against the Leopard 120 without even getting spotted. It is only when Toby moves further up that he catches out the enemy STRV and puts a big shot into him. Also giving him free damage with no return fire, because he also doesn't get spotted. Now against the 430U I am actually holding my shot because of his strong hold down position. And consequently I relocate since there are more enemies on this flank than teammates. However, during this relocation I peek into the town within sniper mode and see that there is a CS63 which I can hit. Using the sniper view gives me confirmation that I have a direct line of sight on the target that can appear differently from the third person view. But it is Toby who was able to finish him off from yet another angle, showing how that particular position in the middle of the town can be rather troublesome to occupy. In the meantime, I'm locating even further back to find more lines of fire into the other flanks. And I check if I could give some additional support fire. Toby now also spots more support possibilities into the town and is able to get another free shot of damage into the flank of the Conqueror, being quick enough to retreat. Now that the enemies have moved up, this standard location has become a lot more effective. And I have shots on both the heavies, the Batchet, or which other tank decides to push further in. So these typical blatantly clear tank destroyer positions are still strong, but are better utilized further into the game if the enemies have actually moved up. If you go there right from the start, you need to, well, blind fire most of your shots outside of view range, since the actual front line of the battle is way up ahead. Meanwhile, Toby is trying to find more flanking shots into the town. However, against the Taschenratte, he finds a lot more trouble to get a clear shot off. Only daring to try when he is somewhat broadside to him, but still the shot drops into his tracks. Going back towards my blatant tank destroyer location, which also has a disadvantage of getting blind fired itself. So I was quite lucky that that shell of the 430U was absorbed in my tracks, making a clear example not to fully passively camp at these kinds of positions. Now, seeing that the enemies are not moving further up from the town anymore, I relocate back to my starting position to counter the inevitable push from the enemies right here. But even on the slightest confirmed push-ups from the enemies makes me retreat again, seeking a better location to support the flank, while Toby stays in order to try and kill the Death Star, but is just too late to get a clear shot in. He stays at the front and now is comfortable to trade against the Patton while I cover his back. If the Patton would push him after he fired, by then I could finish him off. At his second poke he spots the Leopard 120 that I can damage from the back line, making him retreat, Toby to push a little bit further, getting him to catch out and kill the Death Star finally, and when the Leopard wants to return fire, I get a very sneaky pixel shot that kills the Leopard 120. Now with the heat dealt with on this flank, I move into the town in order to surprise the enemies there. While Toby, now with slightly less health, now getting my back at this moment, but after a quick overview decides that my flanks are safe and also moves up into the town to give me more direct support. By going into the town, I get the jump on the Taschenratte, who also managed to bounce my front somehow. Another bit of luck this game. A slight moment later, Toby does a similar thing and catches the Type 5 Heavy off guard. Subsequently, it takes a short while to figure out the best way to make a final approach to kill the Type 5, but eventually our platoon mate MPNL spots him and takes the shot so that Toby can finish him off. After having dealt with the Type 5 Heavy, I am now in pursuit to catch the next target in town, the Batchat. While Toby pays attention to the other flank, where the other enemies are located, and almost was able to kill the EBR right there. Meanwhile, I am trying to check multiple avenues from the town to find the Batchat. But he has already migrated outside, so finding him takes a bit longer. Then Toby gets proxy spotted by the STRV and decides to relocate as well, not wanting to let the enemies encroach on his now more vulnerable position. Just around a minute later, it's MPNL who finds the Batchat but pays for it with his life. So both me and Toby relocate again to deal with the now 3 versus 4 situation. Toby lets me know that he needs support and we form a triangular positioning with the Grill 15, where each of us 3 can help each other through several lines of sight. And with Toby spotting the Batchat slightly in the open, I now have the angle to kill him just in time before he retreats. Then the EBR suddenly appears behind Toby. I'm not really sure how he got there all the way unspotted, but he is now quite busted between both Toby and the Grill with no hopes of escape. And later on, as Toby spots the STRV, I again get multiple shots off from my angle, making him a one-shot for Toby. And with less than 2 minutes on the clock, we decide to cap out the base instead of hunting down the last STRV. And it is only at the very last moment that the STRV shows himself shooting and killing our Grill, but he had the least cap points among the 3 of us, so he couldn't stop our cap on time. And with the death of the Grill and a slight delay of our base capture, I get a final couple of shots of damage into the STRV. So in this match, it was definitely once again positioning that was a key element, but also knowing when to relocate and retreat without losing the lines of fire towards each other to support. Now for most of the battle, both Toby and I could support each other, where at one moment I could support his back and at the other moment he could support mine. Creating this continuous collaboration, we were able to fan out the last amount of enemy tanks and always have some angle of fire towards him while the other one was spotting them. Even though both Toby and I took the spotlights again with the amount of damage that we both accumulated, MPNL deserved more of a shout out this match, taking the hit of the Type 5 Heavy so that Toby can finish him off, and also sacrificing himself pretty much to scout out one of the last remaining enemy tanks. Quite an upgrade to the being completely AFK the previous replay. So these replays showcase both me and Toby Thomas getting excellent results in both the same replay. Most of the time, having excellent replays comes at the cost of the other platoon mate. Well, at least comes at the cost of a PNL in these scenarios. But these replays also just show you the power of platoon play. In the first replay, it was really the confidence it gave me having Toby driving right behind me. Even though he didn't go all the way through towards the middle, he was able to get to deliver a great amount of support right there so that I can actually survive in the middle. And in Ghost Town, we always had a line of fire towards each other, or could have relocated quite quickly towards a location where we could. So with that, that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it, hope you learned from it, and I will see you next time. Laters!